Hi everybody, Beth here from Access Paranormal, coming to you live from London. Now I know it's mid-morning here and it looks rather dark in here. Relax, it's all good. It's very windy outside today, so I've actually had to try and shut up my room as much as possible to try and keep most of the noise out, because this is a 160-year-old building, and trust me, everything rattles. It sounds like there's a horde of people in here constantly banging around. So I looks like it's nighttime, but it's not. So I hope everybody is well. This is the third part of the Poltergeists of London series, and this one's probably the more intense out of the three. There's lots of information that we'll go through, a lot of experiences that people had with this particular case, and it's actually quite well known as the Battersea poltergeist case. And again, I'm very fortunate to live nearby the location where it is, of course. We'll go a bit more into that. So again, I am at the mercy of the internet gods, and particularly because it's windy. So I remember last week with series 2, I think we had storms forecast. So it's summer, everything's all over the shot here. So hopefully, fingers crossed, things go well. So thank you all for joining. So we'll get stuck into it. This is, of course, the Poltergeist of London. It's Wycliffe Road in Battersea. And that picture there is, that's actually, obviously that's a Google Shots sort of map type one. And that's also a photo that I took when I was there about a week ago. I went outside. Now, that's actually not what the building actually looks like. It's been knocked down since, but that's actually the area of where it is. So it's actually changed since. So that's where it is. So let's get into it. So, of course, as we have with each of these series, we look at what the beginning of it actually is, and we look at, obviously, who the occupants of the place is. That's a picture there of the actual street sign that I saw when I was doing a bit of a scout about. I have actually thought about going to these places and doing a bit of a live video from there, but I think, these people will probably be a bit annoyed by me doing so. So I will respect their privacy and then just sneak about, take photos, and then pop it in a presentation. So let's have a look. So we have the occupants of the property. We had Walter Hitchens, who's 43. There was Catherine Hitchens, who was his wife at 51. Shirley Hitchens, 15, daughter which majority of this will be centered around. There's Ethel Hitchens, which was Walter's mum, Shirley's grandmother, and another male relative in his 20s. Now, this particular individual never really wanted their details released out, so that's all we know of, that this particular gentleman was also living in the property, and he was in his 20s at the time. So Shirley, even at the age of 15, still shared her parents' bedroom. Each night the door was locked to prevent Shirley from sleepwalking. So that was obviously from a safety perspective. But I can tell you, when I was 15, the last thing I wanted to do was be in a room with my parents. Love them to death. But I was, at 15, you're really wanting to sort of venture out and do your own thing. And of course, that must have been quite difficult for her. But of course, it was for her safety. On January 1956, Shirley found a key on her bed, but didn't fit any of the doors in the house. So it was the first. It's not huge, but it's different. Tapping sounds were heard shortly afterwards and were thought to be connected to Shirley. So originally they thought, maybe she might be the one that's either causing it, or fraudulent, or maybe non-fraudulent as well. Objects were moved to different places, and of course some of us know that as JOTS, just one of those things, the acronym for. It's different to apport and asports, where we believe it's something from the dead moving it around. So this may be just a possibility of misplaced objects. Don't really know. Wally spoke to a person at his work who claimed to be a part-time medium and invited him to see if he could make contact. So obviously there was a belief from the beginning with the objects moving and some of the knocks and bangs that maybe this could be something that's paranormal and not something that could be easily explained at this point. And the medium was not able to pick up anything at that point in time. Okay. And that can often be the case with poltergeist cases. It's thought to actually come from a person, not necessarily from a spirit. So that's another, obviously, we know as RSPCK. Escalation of phenomena experience. So now we start to go into where it really starts to ramp up. So we've got taps and bangs that were increased, feelings of being touched, pulled off bed sheets, the pulling off, I think that's probably the creepiest for me personally, and the levitation of Shirley whilst in bed as well. So these are the phenomena that people of Shirley had reported and other people had experienced. There were 2 fires in a period of time that had broken out due to some clothing that was put on top of an electric cooker, which was turned on. Now, that starts to become a little bit more intriguing because somebody wouldn't really want to purposely do that. It's not like you just go, oh, I'll get changed for the day and just put my clothes on the stove and then go wander off. I'll just turn it on. It doesn't happen. Those of sound mind would not be doing that at all. So that particular phenomenon is interesting. Of course, there's an article there about it. It already was known as a haunted home. And noises would follow Shirley to work as well. So that's an interesting thing we'll talk about a bit later as well when we start to pull it apart as to what might actually be happening. And the media were notified of the phenomena and the entity was given the name Donald. I really find these things quite interesting. I know sometimes when I've been on investigations at a location and someone says, oh, we have a spirit here called George. I'm like, oh, so you've found something to verify that with? Oh, no, we just have no idea what their name is. So we've just given it a name. Just give it a name. We need to call it something. So we call it George. And so, okay. So obviously that was the case in this particular situation as well. Okay. Harold Chibbett chose to investigate the case. So finally someone's actually stepped up and said, look, I'm going to have a look at this. Spiritualist Harry Hanks conducted seances to remove the poltergeist, and the fires apparently had stopped since then. So that's interesting to have that, but we'll see. The entity would appear to write letters for Shirley. Now, this, again, is another part of this case I find really intriguing, is the fact that, poltergeists writing letters, it becomes a lot more personal, I think. Very interesting. Donald declared at one point that, in fact, Louis XVII, that he was Louis XVII, and claimed to have drowned on the way to England in exile. Now, a lot of people, obviously, we don't really know what happened to Louis XVII, but this particular Donald entity said, well, I am Louis XVII, and I drowned on the way to England when I was in exile. Some of the letters would be signed as Spooky Willie. I love these cases. The entity would apparently write Christmas cards to the family. That's a really personal thing to have happen. And signing it as Spooky Willie, it's a very intriguing situation. Okay. It will also threaten arson if he was not happy. So we've got this really sort of friendly writing letters and Christmas cards. But if he didn't get his way, because remember they did that seance and the fires had stopped, if he wasn't happy and he wasn't appeased, he would actually threaten with arson. The information from the letters would change and not be consistent. And that's, for one example of this, is in French history. The poltergeist said he was Louis Philippe, but he lived between 1773 and 1850. But the last king of France was 1830 to 1848. So the dates did not match. So if you thought you were to be an entity, you'd know roughly the years in which you had been alive or dead. So again, the information was not consistent. And when Harold Chibbett brings this up, the story from the entity again changes. And Donald would also dictate when the family would go to bed. So it seemed to me like a mishmash. Are we dealing with one entity here? Are we dealing with a few different ones, intermittent ones, which we'll talk a little bit about later? Now, I wanted to focus a little bit on the letters because I think this is actually really quite unique. They were all about Shirley herself. They included her abuse she received from her grandmother, and this is what she had claimed at the time. Her love for actors like James Spencer and James Dean. So again, it's a really personal sort of thing to write about. He comments on her boyfriends and appears to act like he has a level of control in the house. So there's this, it's this strange dynamic of friendship protection almost, but at the same time from a place of threatening. The results meant that she could stay at home from losing her job a few times and have her own room. Now, as I mentioned, as a 15-year-old, remembering what I was like, I would have loved to have had my own room. But that's a bonus for her there. And also, I mean, you get to stay home. You don't even have to work. It's not too bad. Then, of course, these are some of the screenshots there. That's one of the articles also about a ghost romance, because, we have to think about, well, did this particular entity actually fancy, Shirley? And apparently they had a seance, and it was quite noisy, and it all came to an end. And the other image there is actually one of the handwritten letters that this particular poltergeist apparently would be sending. All right, so we're going to look at the conclusion, then we're going to start to pull apart what some possible ideas of what may actually be happening here. So when Shirley married in 1965, Donald seemed to disappear in total by 1968. After she moved out of home, some occurrences did happen, but most of it could be explained. So there's stuff that still went on after she left, but it wasn't looked upon and viewed upon possible, paranormal phenomena or poltergeist phenomena. It was actually, no, that could actually be, the wind. Say, for instance, really windy today. It's the wind making it sound like someone's walking up and down, or knocks and bangs. There were more plausible explanations given instead. So it wasn't through the mindset that it was actually a haunting. The letters were still being sent. How's that? Stamped and addressed to random individuals for another 3 years. Now, of course, these days, our postal system would probably be a little bit more advanced, where you could probably properly track this, but we're talking around the 1960s here, and obviously early 70s as well. One of them was sent to Harold Gibbet, the guy that actually was trying to investigate the case. So let's have a look now at the possible reason behind this phenomena that was actually experienced. So some thought Donald may have been an intimate spirit. That's what I mentioned before. So, obviously, sometimes Donald will be there, then Donald wouldn't be there, and another spirit would come in and speak. That would at least maybe explain why the information given was inconsistent, because it was from different entities. Some thought it was a person who had access to books and media of the day and would avoid serious questioning. Okay, that could be one thing, one reason. Did Shirley's mum, Catherine, assist in any fraudulent activities? So maybe Catherine's, seeing her daughter, wanting her to have her independence, but also loving the fact that she would be home. Maybe it was something that she was able to create this fraudulent activity to persuade her father and maybe her grandmother that she needs her own space. Hanks thought Shirley had poltergeist Stockholm syndrome, where a person creates an unhealthy attachment to their tormentor. That's an interesting thing. I've never known of it to be from a poltergeist perspective, but Stockholm syndrome, if you're into your crime documentaries and all that sort of side of it, thriller, that kind of thing, you more than likely would have heard it, and where people actually begin to have an affiliation with somebody who is tormenting them for whatever reason. It's almost like this entity was really quite protective of Shirley, and particularly because she was able to get some independence, but from her family. Some thought that the poltergeist was possessing Shirley and using her to write the letters, because the letters were investigated and appeared to be in Shirley's handwriting. Now, if you're home all the time, I'm thinking to be able to go and post these letters and then, for them to be posted back home, it would be quite interesting. But again, it was in her handwriting as well, and that could be a possibility. Maybe it was possessing her and she was actually able to write, sort of like this handwriting, this information. So what do we all think? The question we pose with each and every one of these series: why can some phenomena occur in one location which can be vastly different to another? Is it about the people? Is it about the location? Or is it both? So we're looking, is it about Shirley? Is it about the location itself? What could actually be happening? Was it truly centered around Shirley? So we're looking at the person here. It appeared to happen when she was at work too. So maybe it may not be location based. So it followed her apparently to work as well. So she would have had witnesses at work, and she lost her job a few times because of it as well. So, and of course, the phenomena included bed covers moving, knocks and bangs, jots, as we mentioned, fires, which is intense, levitation, mysterious letters, and Christmas cards. Boy, it's just a very intriguing poltergeist phenomena. Was it fraud taking place? So was it coming from Shirley? Was she the one that was creating all this to be able to, as I said, she was able to have her own room. She was able to stay at home and not work. She also got media and press attention from it as well. The entity appears to be interested in the men that were interested in her in a protective way. And the entity didn't like her grandmother either. So you're living there, you're stuck in your room, you don't like your grandmother, and then there's this way to be able to actually build some independence and something that was quite protective. I mean, threatening arson, if it didn't get its way, would stop a lot of things happening. And of course, that's the book that you can also get on it. I haven't read the book as yet. It's called The Poltergeist Prince of London, which is the remarkable true story of the Battersea poltergeist. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about this as well, please go and look that book up. There's lots of information on lots of different websites. It's a very easy case to look up because there's lots of documentation on it as well, because it has been something of recent. So yes, a really intriguing case. Obviously, Shirley's alive still today as well, and I believe that the activity is obviously completely ceased from what I can tell. But again, it's a very intense case, I would imagine, having something to be so protective and also very friendly and also very threatening as well. So another type of poltergeist to sink our teeth into as far as different types of phenomena. I hope you really like the series, guys. I've really enjoyed doing this, marrying my two loves of London and Poltergeist. Do put your comments on what you think may be the case, what you've heard, what you've read, and what you know. Would love to hear and see all as I said, on here on Facebook and also on Twitter as well. Sorry, on YouTube as well. Oh, so many bits of social media. Do take care, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you on live again soon.